So, for lesson three, we're going to be talking about how we can read and understand different graphs. So, let's jump right in. Here's two graphs to start with. I would like you to compare these two graphs to each other. What do they have in common? What's different about these two graphs? Just press pause now and take a few moments to think about some of those things right now. How are they similar and how are they different? All right, so you might have noticed that they have the same title at the top. They're both showing how many goals were scored in the year 2005, 2006 for these specific hockey players. They're also both showing the number of goals and the same people. What you might have also noticed is that the one and only thing that is different about these two graphs is what we call their scale, the numbers that go up and down that left side. So on the first graph, it's skip counting by 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on. And the graph on the right is showing it's counting up by tens, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. So now the question becomes, if the only thing different about them is their scale, the numbers on the side, which one of these graphs is actually better for us when we're looking at them? Think about this question and press pause now. Which of these graphs is easier to understand? All right, so there's no real wrong answer. It really is an individual preference. But for me, when I look at the graph on the right, players like Sundin and Aginla actually look really close together. But when I look at the graph on the left, it's more clear that Aginla has way more goals. So when you have a scale with smaller numbers, it's easier to see those differences between things. All right. Here are two more graphs to look at. The one on the left is a bar graph, and the one on the right shows a double bar graph. Again, I would like you to press pause and think about how these two graphs are similar and how they're different. All right. So you might have noticed that once again, these two graphs have the exact same information. If we look at shoes, for example, on the left, it says the number of students have 9 of them wear shoes when they're at home. If we're looking at graph number two, if I look at the data for boys and the data for girls, the boys there's 5 and the girls there's 4. So again, there's 9. So these two graphs are organized very differently, but they actually show the exact same information. They have the same scale. They both are skip counting by 2. They're both displaying their data in different bars, but they look very different. So again, I ask you, do you have a preference on which graph helps you understand the information better? For me, they're both really valuable, but graph number two breaks it down a little bit more so that you really understand it a little bit more differently. Like maybe you would be surprised to see that there's a difference in the kids' choice of footwear when they're in their home based on their gender. That seems really interesting. But also, at the same time, we can think about graph number two and being that who does this graph leave out? So we have lots of questions that come out of these kinds of things when we're looking at graphs. All right, last one. Once again, what do these two graphs have in common and how are they different? Okay, so they have less in common than the other ones have. These show completely different sets of data. The one on the left being the types of homes that people live in, and the one on the right shows that places that people wanted to go for their field trip. Other things you might notice are that the one on the right is a double bar graph, and its scale is skip counting by 2. Meanwhile, back on the left, it's looking at much larger numbers. So the scale is skip counting by tens, which worked out well as a scale because you can still really tell the difference in heights of those bars. None of them really look super close together. So the skip counting by tens was probably a really great choice for the person that made this graph. So now that we see how we can look at a graph and we can try and understand things looking only at the graph without seeing any other data, I hope you're ready to do some practice by yourself for how we can read and understand graphs. See you in lesson 4.